Today we will discuss Red Bull. More specifically, the discourse surrounding the myth that energy drink consumption enhances performance.
Looking at two images, one featuring the classical connection between Red Bull and performance in extreme sports, and the second depicting this discourse in a new context, enhanced performance for overworked students. In the first part, we discussed the juxtaposition between the depiction of energy drinks in athletic events, here extreme sports, and the health hazards of the energy drinks themselves.
In the second part, we will focus on how these depictions are also used to market to students.
In this picture, we see Koutrakis, a professional multi-award winning paragliding athlete from Hungary, drinking Red Bull while doing the infinity tumbling. It is the most spectacular aerobatics maneuver that exists in paragliding. During the infinity tumbling, the pilot and passenger are rotating vertically around the center of the paraglider for as many turns as the pilot desires. The infinity is always performed in the beginning of the routine at high altitude and above water, as we can see in the picture. This picture is a still from a short video in which we see Koutrakis doing the infinity tumbling from different angles. In this specific still, the athlete shows the Red Bull drink up close and center before drinking it. Red Bull especially, but the majority of the energy drinks companies spend great amounts of their budget in sponsoring and organizing events of extreme sports like Formula 1, paragliding and skating. Extreme sports emerged as a reaction against social living patterns and developed an ethos that set them apart from mainstream sports culture. They have been described as lifestyle sports with strong subcultural values and associations to patterns of consumerist consumption. According to some studies, the participants who consumed more than one energy drink per week were more likely to participate in risk-taking behaviors such as extreme sports. Even though people watching videos such as the paragliding tricks understand that they themselves cannot attempt those tricks just by drinking the energy drink, it still connects it subconsciously with it being a necessary part of the whole philosophy of extreme sports. According to John Frankel from HBO, he said that after 20 years, Red Bull is still trying to keep people interesting by sending athletes across the globe to defy gravity in the most spectacular ways. He added that they film every second of it, making sure the Red Bull logo is right in the middle of the action, as we can see in the picture, and then spread the footage far and wide. Red Bull has a strong history in relation to extreme sports, with the climax of it being the 2012 project Stratos. Here, the Austrian skydiver Felix Baumgartner did a free fall from 128 kilometers from the edge of space. When the literature related to this subject is examined, the unconscious consumption of energy drinks can cause rhythm disorder, restlessness, anxiety, muscle spasms, speech disorder, insomnia, headache, hallucination. It is also associated with serious health problems such as addiction, high blood pressure, cardiac arrests, and coma.
This image is a cartoon made for Red Bull by Tibor Hernadi in 2008. It depicts the iconic Red Bull flying away on a pencil at night. The bull is accompanied by books, more pencils, a laptop, and obviously Red Bull. Moreover, there are lightning bolts coming out of the bull's head, implying a massive burst of energy. The image is accompanied by two slogans. A new one, minds, like pencils, work better when sharp, and the classical Red Bull gives you wings. The cartoon is part of a discourse that was relatively new in energy drink marketing in 2008, namely marketing to students. And trying to break into this new market, Red Bull had to sort of reinvent themselves, and in this cartoon we can see how this is done while still heavily relying on re-established myths and tropes. So the previously established and discussed visual tropes, myths, and sort of discourses in the paragliding image are still at play, but more subtle and subconscious. They're simply repackaged for a new target audience. However, it's critical to note that the success of this ad still heavily relies on the fact that the viewer or the consumer is still aware of these foundational myths and discourses. When one is familiar with these extreme sport discourses and they're exposed to the sort of triumphs of the athletes associated to Red Bull, and in this context, in the context of this image, Red Bull is conveying that if Red Bull makes astronauts and paragliders focused enough to achieve their dreams, it will get you sharp enough to study all night long. And even if the discourse is repackaged and sort of reconstructed for students, it remains grounded in our foundational myth of giving the consumer wings, so to speak. So another thing to note is that depicting the bull studying at night plays on another very popular discourse. I mean, a discourse that actually was gaining increasing popularity around the early 2000s, and which is students being exposed to a heavier workload while having less and less time to do so. Therefore, they're trying to capitalize on an increasingly common phenomenon, sort of pulling an all-nighter, and are therefore aiming to profit off of this new discourse. So it's no surprise that Red Bull's advertisements are successful. In 2019, Red Bull infamously sold a can of their energy drink for every person on Earth, approximately 7.5 billion. But how successful has it actually been at sort of conveying these myths and discourses to this new student market? Well, a study in 2017 revealed that the intake of caffeinated energy drinks had significantly increased, specifically among young adults from 2010 onwards. And they revealed that college students have become prone to developing unhealthy eating habits with an increasing dependence on stimulants, which puts them at a greater risk for sleeping problems. So a sample of 919 adults were selected from various colleges and universities in the United Arab Emirates. And the study revealed that 376 students, which is 41% of them, consumed energy drinks on a regular basis, and at least half of them had gotten sleeping problems as a result of them. And maybe an even more sort of peculiar example and sort of testament to the effectiveness of these advertisements is a study done on medical students back in 2015, which was conducted to examine the energy drink consumption and patterns of nursing students in South Korea. And while educated on the health hazards of energy drinks, around 1,620% of the nursing students, which is 78.1%, reported using excessive amounts of energy drinks and having rely on them, even though they have an overall negative effect on students' sleeping patterns and had a very negative effect on their overall energy levels. I mean, who can blame them? I cannot. So this image is a part of Red Bull's digital marketing campaign, and this is done for a reason, because studies show that digital promotion of energy drinks to young adults actually leads to more consumption than any other media form. So in 2018, Limin Buchanan concluded that digital marketing was more strongly associated than any other marketing with young adults' energy drink consumption, because it enhances sort of the young people's belief regarding these products and their sort of intended and actual consumption. In other words, successfully communicating the aforementioned myths and discourses. So another key aspect of this image is the fact that it's a cartoon. This is intentional. It allows Red Bull to make unlimited claims on the effects of their product under the guise of a sort of cartoon fantasy. So in 2018, Red Bull published this cartoon animation of a man playing chess against a robot and beating him due to drinking Red Bull. And then this animation was actually challenged by someone, and the complainant challenged whether the advert implied that drinking Red Bull had a beneficial effect on health, specifically on his brain power, which would be a health claim which must be authorized by the EU register. However, Red Bull stated that their adverts had always sort of played around with the fantastical and the impossible in a sort of humorous way. And then the ASA noted that the effects of drinking Red Bull was indeed ambiguous and balances between the humorous and the fantastical, and therefore they ruled that there was no breach of code and no further action was required. The promise of endless possibility ultimately comes back to the slogan, Red Bull gives you wings, which according to executive creator Jono Simon is a simple proposition that is flexible enough to free your imagination and not handcuff reality.
The common parts between the pictures is that they both promote the enhancement of abilities, limitless possibilities, and reaching one's full potential by giving you wings. Both target younger audiences, mostly through digital marketing, while disregarding or simply not addressing the reality of the health hazards that come with the consumption of Red Bull. Now, as for the differences, the first image depicts the world of extreme sports and its connection to Red Bull, conveying the idea that Red Bulls allowed these athletes to perform such incredible tasks. However, consumers do not directly identify with the athletes themselves, being aware that this idea of coolness does not reflect most people's reality.
The second image, unlike the first one, is a cartoon and therefore not grounded in reality, being able to promise consumers endless possibilities. It is, however, more subtle than the first image, merely borrowing visual tropes from extreme sports and making them appear more mundane, providing their target audience with an image to identify with. namely the overworked student looking for a way to enhance their performance and continue studying.
In conclusion, Red Bull might give you wings, but you have to make sure not to fly too close to the sun.